Hey everybody, so today we're gonna do a Chatty Q&A video where I'm gonna answer your questions. A lot of you sent me in questions on Instagram and I'm super happy to answer your questions about autism, ADHD, about my life as an auDHDer, about what it's like to be a creator who is autistic and ADHD. And you guys just asked so many great questions and I'm really excited. But if you're relatively new here and you don't know me that well, let's just start with introductions. Hello, my name is Megan. I'm 30 years old. I am autistic and ADHD. I was diagnosed about 2 years ago, but I was self-diagnosed before that. I'm a mom of 3, including a set of twins. I've been married to my best friend in the whole world for 7 years. And I'm a life coach for autistic, ADHD, or neurocurious folks. You know, people who know there's something going on, but don't really know what that is. Oh, and I change my hair all the time, which is why it's teal now instead of the blonde it was before. Feel free to introduce yourself in the comments. I would love to get to know some of the people who are watching my videos. Tell me a little bit about you. All right, we've done introductions. Now let's get to the questions. First up is, what makes your living space feel like home to you, both general and neurodivergence wise? Okay, so this is such a good question because we actually moved a year ago and I really struggled with the transition, even though I love our new house and it's amazing and it's perfect for us and it's everything we wanted and more. It was still really hard. So I think one of the biggest things that makes my house feel like home is time spent in it. Sometimes when you're autistic, you just need time to allow your nervous system to adjust to the change. Transitions are often very difficult for us. But besides time, I'm a big fan of painting. I love painting my house. I don't care if it hurts the resale value. Our old house had a bright yellow kitchen, like bordering on neon. It was really bright and it was perfect for me. And I painted a tree in my son's old bedroom and it was beautiful. And in my twins' room, we have a sun mural and a moon and clouds mural that I painted. And then in my son's room here at this house, he has a checkered wall that we painted as well. So I just love fun paint. I think that makes me feel at home in a space. We also have fidgets all over our house for our kid and for us. And like we have squishies, we have slugs, we have those tubes that you can like stretch in and out and make that fun sound and all of that good stuff. So fidgets are everywhere. And for me, something that makes a house feel like a home is scent. Scent is really important to me. So I have those Bath & Body Works wallflowers in 2 different places on our main floor so that our main floor always smells pleasant. You know, to me, that's just important. I know every house has its own smell and you really can't do anything about that necessarily, but like I just enjoy walking into my home and being like, fresh bookstore, how great. Okay, next question. How do we balance self-compassion and striving to be the best version of yourself with ADHD? I love this question, mostly because I don't necessarily believe in being the best version of yourself. I think especially for autistic folks, I know this question was about ADHD and we'll get there, but I think especially for autistic folks or other people who tend to take things very literally, trying to be the best version of yourself is fucking exhausting. It's an intense amount of pressure to be flawless, to be perfect, to be performing at optimal levels all the time. But that's not a human thing to do. We don't perform at optimum levels all the time, and it's especially not a disabled thing to do. When you're disabled, when you have a neurodevelopmental disability like autism, like ADHD, there are certain things that you can't do, or that you can't do as well as a neurotypical, or you can't do in the same way as a neurotypical person. Disability doesn't make you less than, but it does affect your ability to do things and your ability to do things in the way that you're expected to do them. So I think when we strive to be our best self, it just puts so much pressure on us. And so I don't strive for that anymore. I used to, and I just don't. Instead, I saw this on Instagram and I really love it. And this is what I use now. I strive to be my favorite self. My favorite self has teal hair. My favorite self has crazy nails. My favorite self is kind and funny and interesting. My favorite self creates YouTube videos and has a blast doing it. My favorite self goes out in the sunshine and goes for walks. My favorite self makes her babies laugh. My favorite self, you know, has deep, meaningful conversations with her husband. That's who I want to be. Screw best, screw optimal, screw trying to be abled when I'm not. I want to be my favorite disabled self. So that's a big way I introduce self-compassion into the world of self-improvement, is instead of trying to improve myself in the terms of being more optimized and being best, I try to improve myself in the sense of doing more of what I love and being more of the person I want to be, my favorite version of myself. This question comes from a past client of mine. If you want to work with me, go ahead and go to the description and book a discovery call. We can talk, but this comes from a past client and she says, what's something you look forward to? This is such a nice question. I think I always look forward to dyeing my hair. That's why I dye it so often, because it gives me something to look forward to. I know in 2 months this is going to be a completely different color, and that just makes me happy to think about and to know that there are so many more colors on the horizon that I haven't tried yet. I also like to make sure that once or twice a year, me and my husband go to see some sort of show, whether it's a play or a comedian or a musical or something. I try to make sure we go and we see a performance of some kind, because I really enjoy looking forward to performances. I also really look forward to going to Target twice a week to get my twins formula, because I let myself buy something for like $7 or less every time, and that's always really nice. So like last time I got these really cute little butterfly hair clippies. I think they were in a past video. They're adorable. And I just get to buy myself a little treat whenever I buy them their formula, because it's like I'm nourishing them and also like nourishing my soul, I guess. It's capitalistic and crappy, but like it is really fun. All right, next question says, favorite thing about being neurodivergent and the hardest thing about it. Okay, so this question is difficult for me because I never know which of my like personality traits, which of my experiences I'm supposed to attribute to my autism, my ADHD, and which stuff is just me. It's all kind of intertwined. So like, for example, I don't always love being like, my neurodivergence makes me creative. And it's like, what if I wasn't autistic or ADHD? Would I still be creative? I feel like that's intrinsic to me, but the autism and ADHD are intrinsic to me too. There's really no version of me that isn't autistic or ADHD, so it's really hard to know which parts of me are like my favorite part of neurodivergence and which parts are like my favorite part of being me. Does that make sense? So I'm gonna try to parse this out though. Let's go ahead and start with the hardest part of being neurodivergent, because that is easier for me to answer. And I think there's a couple of things that are kind of vying for first place, but I think one of the hardest parts about my particular experience with neurodivergence is my experience with empathy. So if you don't know, there are kind of two types of empathy. There's cognitive empathy, which is your ability to think through someone else's point of view, put yourself in their shoes. And then there's emotional empathy, which is your ability to feel what someone else is feeling. And I kind of feel like I got the worst of both worlds. I don't have very strong cognitive empathy. I do struggle to put myself in other people's shoes, especially in the moment. If I'm intentionally trying outside of the moment, I can do it. But in the moment, in a conversation, I really can't a lot of the time. But on the other hand, I have very strong emotional empathy, which means I feel what they're feeling coming at me and I'm like, whoa, and it just like is in my body. And due to my trauma, which by the way, trauma is a form of acquired neurodivergence, so that would be included under this umbrella. Due to my trauma, I often feel like it's my job to regulate other people's emotions for them. And so all of this combines into this really not fun soup of like, when someone is upset, I assume they're upset with me. I have no clue how to put myself in their shoes, but all I feel is their intense emotions, like a barrage, like a hurricane. And it's uncomfortable at best and debilitating at worst. And it does get in the way of my relationships a lot, because especially like my husband's like, I'm not mad at you. I don't need you to feel my feelings. I need you to understand where I'm coming from. And I'm like, I literally struggle with that due to my disability. Like I'm really sorry. And he gets that, he understands it, but it's hard and it does get in the way sometimes of our communication. Okay, I think my favorite part of my neurodivergence is the combination of my special interest and hyperfocus. So the combo of autism and ADHD. I have a couple of special interests, but one of them is small business, just running an online business. I love it. I've been running my business for like 4 years now, and I'm a little obsessed with it. It's so much fun to me. And then hyperfocus basically allows you to just sink into something for a couple hours and nothing else exists. And it just brings me so much joy. I'm so much happier in my job than so many other people my age, and I will always be so eternally grateful for that. Okay, this is a related question. I would love to know what your best/worst thing about parenting as a neurodivergent person is. So parenting while neurodivergent, I can tell you the worst part of it for sure. The worst part is it's actually not related. So when someone says neurodivergent, a lot of times what they mean is autistic and ADHD, but that's not what the word neurodivergent means. Neurodivergent is a huge umbrella that includes tic disorders, Alzheimer's, epilepsy, personality disorders, trauma, traumatic brain injury, all kinds of stuff, right? So for me, if we're talking neurodivergence, the hardest part of parenting is my trauma. I suck at discipline. And kids need discipline, not disciplining like smacking them or something. We don't do that, but like they need structure and boundaries. They need to know when they've crossed a line. There have to be consequences. And I really struggle with doing any of that. I'm not going to dive into my trauma right now. This is not a trauma dump Q&A, but just know that like the way I was raised was amazing and wonderful. And there were also aspects that were harmful and difficult. And everything is always both and. That's something I'm really learning to accept. And some of the more difficult parts have made it really tricky for me to give my kid the structure and boundaries and consequences that he needs. Now, if you're wondering about autism and ADHD specifically and how those affect my parenting, I would say the worst part is the overstimulation. My twins, both of them, had colic until they were 5 months old. So we had 5 months of 2 babies screaming nonstop. And those were some of the hardest months I think I've ever had as a parent. There's just not a lot you can do for a colicky baby. Everybody has their own theories. Please don't put your advice in the comments. Like I said, they're not colicky anymore, so we're very grateful. But everybody has their own advice. None of it worked for us. It's something some babies go through, and we tried everything, and it just breaks your heart to hear them scream, but also you start to lose your patience. And yeah, so even without the colic though, it's like having to watch them all the time now that they're mobile, like that attentional fatigue, I guess, is what gets to me sometimes. It's just overstimulating to have to pay attention to 3 little gremlins all the time, especially the older gremlin is like, mom, why? It's great. It's part of his development, and I'm so happy for him, and it's also a lot for me. And honestly, the best part of parenting as a neurodivergent person, and you guys are gonna laugh at me, or some of you might even get mad, I don't know. For me, is the schedule. Kids will keep you on a schedule so much better than I have ever been able to keep myself on a schedule. Kids wake up and they need water and a Pop-Tart, and they want to watch Bluey, and you need to get up and do stuff for them. You can't just lay in bed and doom scroll for 3 hours every morning. You have to get up and take care of another person. And for me, at least, that has been huge. Like, I used to really struggle with getting out of bed in the morning. And once I had a kid, I didn't really struggle with that anymore because someone needed me. And I can't always take care of myself for myself, but I'm really good at taking care of other people. And I am working on that, by the way. Like, I'm working on seeing myself as someone worth getting up for, but sometimes even when you're like worthwhile and good and all that stuff, it's still hard to get out of bed. So it's easier with kids, and they keep me on a routine. They keep me on a schedule that I find really helpful. Okay, so this person says, what is your #1 coping strategy for sudden intense emotions? I love this because I'm a very emotional person. Emotional dysregulation is a huge part of my neurodivergence, so excellent question, friend. My #1 strategy is probably crying. Honestly, crying is such a good release for me, whether I'm angry, frustrated, sad, disappointed, whether I'm just struggling with a transition. Sometimes that brings up big emotions, or even if I don't know what I'm feeling. A lot of times if I can allow myself to cry, if I can just, and honestly, it helps to just lay down with a soft blanket and like quiet music playing, or maybe not even music. Sometimes that can be too overstimulating. Just lay down, close your eyes, and let your feelings just like bubble and let the tears start falling. That, to me, I always feel better when I cry. always. It doesn't solve anything, but crying's not meant to solve anything. Crying is just a release, and that way I'm not holding it right here anymore. It can get out, and it's also very validating. Tears are real, tears are physical, tears are evidence that I am upset and I am allowed to be upset. And so I just find it to be very cathartic. All right, next question is, what's your go-to way to motivate or trick yourself into doing stuff you don't necessarily want to do? Oh my goodness. Okay, so I have an entire program about this called the Get Shit Done program. If you want to check it out, the link is in the description. I love helping people with this. This is called executive dysfunction, and it's when you really want to be productive, you want to get shit done, and it's like there's this giant brick wall in between you and the task, and you're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this, and you can't always predict when the brick wall is going to be there. It's so frustrating, but I have really worked on this over the years, so I have a couple of methods that I like to use. First, there's emotional tools that you have got to learn. And I know a lot of people scoff at this or ignore this part or skip this part, but I'm telling you, I can teach you every productivity tip in the world, and they will not work for you if you are convinced that you're a lazy, stupid, bad person. You have got to do the emotional work to recognize that you're already trying your best and that the world was not set up for you and the way that your brain works, and that it's okay to need help and it's okay to do things differently, and that you are not lazy or stupid or bad. You've got to do that work, because I'm telling you, the productivity hacks will never take hold if you kind of low-key or high-key hate yourself. Now, emotional stuff aside, which I also teach in the Get Shit Done program, by the way, there are some practical tips that I really recommend. There are 3 main methods of productivity that I personally love to teach. They are the gamification method, the inchworm method, and the charcuterie board method. I won't go too deep into any of them. Like I said, you can join the Get Shit Done program to learn more, but the gamification method is make it a game. ADHD brains love games, okay? So I know one client of mine uses like a bingo card every morning, and she writes down like all the things she needs to get done. Her job is not to do all the things, it's just to get one bingo. Once she gets bingo, she's allowed to be done for the day. I think that's brilliant. It's a game. I personally love D&D, so sometimes I write out 20 tasks that need done, and then I roll a 20-sided dice, and I do whatever it lands on, and I just roll a dice a couple of times and get shit done that way. So gamification is great for our brains. The second method is the inchworm method. Highly recommend this. This is basically allowing yourself to work the way you naturally work. So I like to describe it as like neurotypicals move like snakes. So they move at a steady pace. Maybe they wiggle back and forth a little bit, but generally in one direction at a steady pace. A lot of ADHDers especially, but other neurodivergent people as well, function more like inchworms. We kind of bunch up and then we just like burst forward and we do everything. And then we're like, we rest and we recover, we bunch up, and then we burst forward and do everything. Just allow yourself to work that way. What's so wrong with that? Consistency is not the end goal. Consistency is the tool that gets you to the end goal, which is getting shit done. If this works for you, do it. So that's the inchworm method. And finally, the charcuterie board method is where you kind of just pick a bunch of random things that need done that aren't really associated or tied together, and you kind of just write them all on a list, like a charcuterie board of things that need done, and you can just kind of snack on whatever feels least intimidating and whatever looks easiest to do. So those are a couple of my hacks. There is so much more in the Get Shit Done program, like you don't even know. There's a lot more. So highly recommend joining that. You can check it out in the description below. Alrighty, next question is, how do you overcome overwhelm when cleaning or decluttering as an autistic? So this is such a good question. I'll be honest with you, this is one area of my life that I still really struggle with. Cleaning is hard for me. And I don't know if it's because of my autism or because of my ADHD or my trauma or all of the above or some secret fourth thing, I don't know. But cleaning is hard. I really hate doing it. Decluttering I'm okay with, especially like the daily pickup. I'm good at that. I'm really good at doing the daily pickup. I know to unload the dishwasher. I know where all the toys go. I know like picking up is easy, but like cleaning the bathroom, sweeping the floors, dusting. So I'm bad at that stuff. And I don't have a lot of advice for you on that. When it comes to the daily pickup, what helps me is knowing that it'll take me 10 minutes and it'll feel so much better for hours. The return on investment is huge. I like to think of it that way. Something else that helps me is I have a visual timer. So you can like set the timer so that a little piece of color appears and it slowly disappears as the time passes. So sometimes in my head, I look around at the mess and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is gonna take hours to pick up. And I'm like, I bet it won't. I bet it'll take 20 minutes. So I set my timer for 20 minutes. And if I beat the timer, it's like, it didn't even take 20 minutes. How great is that? And so that really helps me as well. All right, and now we have a couple of questions that are specifically about being like a creator, an entrepreneur, stuff like that. So somebody asked, how do you juggle being a mom and entrepreneur? Daycare is a really big part of juggling that. My kids are at daycare right now. They weren't in daycare. The twins specifically weren't in daycare for the first couple months of their lives. And you can tell the videos filmed during that time have babies screaming in the background, not because I'm ignoring them, by the way, but because they were colicky and I did absolutely everything for them. They were well taken care of and they just kept screaming, and I tried to film through it and got many complaints on those videos about like, there's a baby screaming in the background. And I'm like, I know. They're well taken care of, I promise. I took 10, 20 minutes to film a video and checked on them in between takes. Like, it's okay. But daycare has become a really big part of being able to run my business. I really could not do it without having them in daycare, I don't think. Especially because I'm a coach, which means I have a lot of like meetings with clients and stuff. If I were just creating content, I might be able to do it during nap times or after they go to bed or like while they're eating, or there might be pockets of time I could find, but it's really hard with 3 kids to sit down for a full hour with a client and devote all my attention to them, which is what I want for my clients. So daycare is a huge part of how I juggle things. I'm also really working on not working when my kids are home and awake. That's difficult because I'm a bit of a workaholic. I really like my work and there's a lot that needs done like all the time. But I'm working on when I go to pick them up, I take them to the park or I take them to the YMCA, or we come home and we do an activity, or even if we're just watching TV together, I try to just be present with them. It's hard because, like I said, my business is my special interest. That's where my brain is a lot of the time, but I also know that they're only going to be this little once, and they're so freaking cute. I don't want to miss this. So I'm really working on that. Okay, somebody else asked, how do you get over the fear of making content? I want to, but the fear is real. Oh my gosh, this is so real. When I started making content, I started blogging, and that wasn't hard for me because I'm a writer, and that didn't feel too, what's the word I'm looking for? Like obtrusive. Like I didn't feel like I was being watched as much as like being on video, right? So if writing does feel like very much like you're being perceived and watched, then you can apply this advice to that as well. But for me, it was mostly video. I was terrified when I started making videos. I started on TikTok. I'm not on there anymore, but I started on TikTok. And when I started, I literally we had a 1,000 square foot house. It wasn't huge. My husband would be in the office with the door closed with his headphones in. And I would still like go to the farthest end of the house away from the office that I could. And I would like hold up my phone and I would like basically whisper like, hi guys, my name is Megan. Like, oh, I was so terrified of him hearing me. This man who loves me and has been with me for like a decade, like it's not a big deal for him to hear me, but I was so embarrassed of trying, right? I think being perceived trying is so hard, especially if you grew up like in gifted programs and stuff like I did, where you were expected to just kind of get everything and not have to try. When you are seen trying, and then what if it flops? What if it doesn't succeed? And then it's like, so I get this feeling. It's horrible. I think my biggest piece of advice is do whatever you can to make yourself more comfortable. For me, that was speaking very quietly in the other room and double checking that my husband had his headphones in, or sometimes even just filming in my car so that I was out of the house. Whatever I had to do to just make myself feel comfortable enough to at least start. And then from there, practice and time will start to be really helpful to you. Eventually, it'll just become less and less cringe as you get better at it. And there is a saying I want to tell you because I think it has helped me a lot. And it's, don't kill the part of you that's cringy. Kill the part of you that cringes. And that basically means the part of you that's trying is not the bad part. It's the part of you that's judging yourself. Get rid of that part. So that's my advice for creating content. There's really no way to do it without being afraid, as far as I'm aware. I'm a very extroverted human being, and I'm still was still utterly terrified. The first time I went live, I had a full-blown panic attack afterwards. It was horrible. And I don't say this to scare you. I say this to show you that I make content all the time now, and it's not a big deal. It was just really scary at first. All right, last question. What made you want/decide to be a life coach? I love this question. If you told 18-year-old me that I was a life coach, she would be pretty much a bitch about it. I would have been so judgmental and been like, a life coach is not even real. That is something rich assholes use instead of going to therapy. It's bullshit and that's not a real job. She would be really mean about it, I'm pretty sure. So this was not always my life goal. My life goal has shifted a million times over, probably because I'm ADHD. But originally I wanted to be a research psychologist when I was young. And I was basically told no, because you're gonna want to have babies. And it's really hard to have babies when you're trying to get your PhD. And I was like, okay, that was basically what I was told growing up. So I was like, fine, I guess I won't be a research psychologist. Instead, I'll be a speech language pathologist. I love that. I love people who help others communicate. I think that's awesome. So I went to school for that. Undergrad, I went to school for speech language pathology. It was called Communication Sciences and Disorders. And then when it came time for grad school, I applied to some schools for speech language pathology, but I also applied to some schools for poetry. I had taken a poetry class my senior year and I really loved it, and my professor really encouraged me to pursue it. And so I applied and I got in, and I just doing the math, speech language pathology was I was gonna have to take out my very first loan in order to graduate grad school. But poetry, they were gonna pay me to get my degree. I mean, not a lot. It was pennies, really, especially considering I was teaching a course. It was ridiculous how little they pay you for the amount of work you put in, but that's a whole other conversation. But still, I wouldn't have to take out a loan and I would get to do poetry. So I did it. I did it. I was like, this is great. So I have my master's in poetry, in case you didn't know that. So that, I never wanted to be a full-time poet. I know a lot of people do, but to me, that lifestyle sounds hard. That sounds really difficult, and that was never what I wanted. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I figured I would work as a copywriter, I would do marketing or do freelance writing or something. And that's what I did. I got into, after I graduated with my master's, I started freelancing, doing copywriting for different businesses and stuff like that. And it was really nice. It was just kind of boring. So I started a blog just for fun, but then I started my real business in 2020. And my goal was just to be a mental health creator. I had no intention of being a coach when I started my business. I was like, I'll just create courses and digital products and blog posts. And I was like, I'm not going to be on video. I'm not going to coach. I'm not going to do any of the stuff I do now. I just wanted to write a blog and get some affiliate income and do everything that way, kind of old school 2010s, but it wasn't the 2010s anymore. And getting a blog to the point that you can make bill paying money off of just ads and affiliate income is really hard and doesn't happen for too many people anymore. So I started to realize that. And so honestly, I'm being totally transparent with you here. I started exploring the idea of coaching because I needed the money. Now, I know that can sound kind of bad. Okay, so you're charging people money to help them with their mental health because you need money. That can sound bad, but let me offer you a bit of a reframe. I have been interested in psychology, mental health, what it means to be a person, basically, my entire life. I have been researching the crap out of all of this my entire life. I have a lot of personal experience with mental health struggles, from depression to autism and ADHD and trauma and so much more. I had all this knowledge and it was just sitting there. doing nothing for anyone except me. And so I started charging for people to learn what I knew and for me to help guide people through their own journey by showing them my journey. And yeah, it started because I needed the money, which by the way is not a bad reason to do a job. That's why most people do their jobs, is because they need to pay their bills. I don't understand why when it comes to small business, all of a sudden that's a sin, but when you work for a corporation, it's fine. Like, it's okay to work to make money. Money is important in our lives and it's okay. So it started as a way to pay my bills and to afford formula for my kiddo and all this stuff, and it has turned into what I would really call a passion and a calling. I love coaching. I think I'm really good at it. It's one of those things that I've always been good at. I've always been a coach. My friends have always come to me for help. I remember in high school, I would stay up late writing letters to people, just validating their feelings and giving them advice and showing them so much love and support. Like, I've always been a coach, and it's just now it's my job, and it's the best job. Obviously, if you want to work with me, you can go to the description and book a discovery call. I would love to work with you because, like I said, this is like my favorite job I've ever had, and I've had some eclectic work history. So I really love it, and I would love to work with you. All right, well, that's all the questions. So thank you so much for hanging out with me for this chatty little video, and I will see you all next time.